Good day, everyone. Eric from Helps Law Firm for Seniors and Disabled Persons. Good to have you here today on June 10th, 2025. My name's Eric, founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm that represents seniors and disabled persons who owe debt they can't afford to pay. Help stands for Help Eliminate Legal Problems for Seniors, and that's what we do. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but the topic today is, can they take my Social Security? Well, I don't know. It depends on who they is, but the answer is no. They're not going to take your Social Security. Your Social Security is protected. That's our important message to seniors. Social Security is protected. It has been since 1935. The only exception is if you owe past due child support, then it's possible you could lose some of your Social Security that way. Or if you owe income taxes to the IRS, it's possible for the IRS to offset 15% of Social Security. But that usually can be stopped, especially if you're a senior with modest or lower income. You can get on what's called currently not collectible status. IRS wouldn't offset your Social Security until they gave you a notice saying they intend to do it after 60 days. And that would give you a chance to contact the IRS and get on currently not collectible status. We talk about that a lot here, and we got videos on that. Then the only other reason you could lose some of your Social Security is if you had a debt to another federal agency, and that's like Small Business Administration, Rural Development Commission, maybe a credit union, a federal credit union, like if you're in the military. But once again, we run into these very rarely, okay? And then there's a way to stop that if that were to happen. So no, your Social Security is safe, and so is your pension. In 1974, a law was passed called ERISA, Employment Retirement Income Security Act, and most pensions are covered under ERISA, but if it's not protected under that federal law, ERISA, it will be protected under a state law. Okay, so no one's going to take your pension. And then if your federal benefit, like your Social Security, is deposited into a bank account, can they take it out of the bank account? Well, in 2012, there was a rule put in effect that told banks that you have to protect twice the amount of Social Security or federal benefits deposited into a bank account, regardless of what other funds are in there or where they came from. So if you got $1,500 in Social Security, times 2 would be $3,000. $1,500 a month times 2 would be $3,000 protected automatically, even if money was in there from another source. Now, if you happen to have more than that in there, it's still protected, just not automatically. You have to file some paperwork to get it released. Yesterday, I talked about a guy that was worried about his bank being garnished. I told him, just be patient and wait. Now, I haven't heard from him. I'm pretty sure he found out yesterday afternoon that the money was released, but we'll see. It will be, okay? So you don't need to be nervous about losing your Social Security or your pension. That's our message. And then our second message is there's a federal law passed in 1978 called the Fair Debt Collectors Practices Act. That law provides if you're represented by an attorney, debt collectors can no longer call or send you demand letters anymore. And that's what Helps does. We represent seniors and disabled persons who owe debt in order to stop collectors harassing them. They find out about us, they call us, we talk to them on the phone, maybe they call 2 or 3 or 4 times. They decide to enroll, we enroll you over the phone. It just takes a minute. We click a button and we wait till you get an email from us that says, welcome to Helps, confirms you're a member of Helps. Then you give us the creditors you owe money to, you don't want to deal with. We send them a cease and desist letter out. They're going to leave you alone. Peace is going to come back to your life. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat feature. I'll try to address it. But we don't want you to worry. So I'll start out with someone asked this question. If you have a joint bank account, can your debtors try to take funds or a portion of them? And this is what my responded to this person. Any account to which Social Security is deposited or other federal benefit, like the VA, Veterans Administration, disability payment, or a post office worker, that's a federal worker, or Office of Federal Management, if you're a federal worker getting federal retirement. Okay, twice the monthly amount um, is protected automatically that's deposited into the bank, regardless of the source of funds actually in the account at the time of garnishment. Now, someone can't garnish you unless they were to sue and get a judgment. They have to know where you work. Know where you bank. And if they happen to know that and they file a writ of garnishment on your bank will examine your account and they can determine where the money came from. They times the federal amount times twice and protect that. It doesn't matter how many persons or whose name is on the account. It's the source of the funds that is the determining factor. So yeah, you could have a joint bank account, have other people in the name with you. Doesn't matter. If a bank got a writ of garnishment and they looked at that account, they determined that federal funds went in there like Social Security, it doesn't matter whose name is on the account. They're going to protect twice the amount of the money in that account. Okay? So Mrs. H asks, can you explain how a creditor can keep trying to get paid after they've been paid and a charge off has been given and they isn't that double dipping again? Well, if a creditor can't collect a debt, yeah, eventually they will charge off the debt. And all that is it's an internal thing for tax purposes for the creditor. They don't report taxes like we report taxes. We report taxes after you earn money. For them, they report taxes, even if they haven't been paid the money yet. And so when a charge off, that way they get to deduct that anticipated amount of money they were going to get. And so they report taxes a little bit different. But they can still, doesn't mean that they still can't try to collect the debt. They can. They're going to turn it over to a debt collector who will try to collect the debt. And if they're able to collect the debt, then they'll report and they get money from that. Then they'll report that as income. They'll adjust their tax return to report that as income. So if they write a debt off as uncollectible or a charge off, which means they've tried to collect it, they can't collect it. It doesn't mean they can't still try to collect it. They can. And if they do collect it, then they'll adjust their tax return. So they're really not double dipping. Jimmy says, I feel that all judges should examine the source and stop it at the court level. Actually, when Congress changed the law in 2012, they stopped it ahead of the court level. They just told the banks, you get a writ of garnishment, you stop it right there. So the judge doesn't have anything to do with it. Okay. It doesn't go to a judge. So you get that money released virtually immediately. Okay. Technically, under the law, they have 2 days, 48 hours to examine the account to determine if the money came from a federal source. I always tell people that they do it within 4 to 8 minutes. They do it pretty fast nowadays. Okay. So, no. Now, if you had more than twice the amount, and then technically you could file what's called a challenge of garnishment or claim of exemption, and then the judge would get involved at that point and order that excess be released. But for most seniors, they don't have more than twice the amount of federal benefits in their bank account, and so the garnishment, they don't need to worry about it. Okay. Lori says, I have an RV which is underwater, most likely giving it back. Can they go after my IRA? No. Independent retirement accounts are protected under ERISA, Employment Retirement Income Security Act. It's going to be safe. Also, I'm in California. My RV is in Utah. Can I turn it back to them in Utah? Do I have to bring it back to California? No, you can just leave it right where it's at. And just tell them where it's at. And it's their responsibility to pick it up. You don't have to bring it back. We don't want you to ever drive it unless it's insured because you could get your license affected. But if it's parked somewhere and you're paying someone to store it for you, you could stop paying them and you could take the insurance off it if it's parked. That might make the lender pick it up faster. Okay. But no, you don't need to transport it to make it easier for them. So Rockabilly says, let me say this. As a member of HELPS, I got a court summons. I called HELPS. They sent a letter to the law office trying to sue me. That's what we do. When you enroll with us, if you happen to be sued or you're sued in the future, you let us know. We don't need everything, just the first 2 or 3 pages. We're going to write a letter to the attorney, let him know that your income is protected. That lets them know that it's kind of a waste of time for the lawsuit. We tell them you're not going to go to court. We understand they're going to get a judgment. Remind them about the protected nature of your bank account. Although it really doesn't matter. It's protected by your bank. They don't really need to be reminded, but we do it anyway. And in this case, he says, I received notice Thursday the lawsuit had been dismissed. Well, that's great. Doesn't happen all the time. Does happen enough that I notice it. But it wouldn't matter if it was dismissed or not. You're not going to have to pay it. Okay? Why would Sandra ask a question that I often ask too? Why would LNV funding keep filing lawsuits? What happens with the judgments when I pass? I've been a client of HELPS for a while now. Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, if they know that your income is protected, and why would they file a lawsuit? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with they count on seniors not understanding their rights. You know, you're listening to me now. A lot of you are members of HELPS or you're investigating about HELPS, and maybe you're learning for the first time what I'm talking about. But you can imagine the vast majority of seniors don't know this and aren't told this. They aren't told their income is protected. Or if they're sued, they think they have to pay the debt. Okay, and so that's the whole purpose of them filing lawsuits is they want to take advantage of a senior's lack of knowledge, getting them to call them to make arrangements to pay a debt. They're under no obligation to tell you that your income is protected. No, they don't have to do that. So that's why they do it. They count on you not knowing what your rights are, and that's what helps us here. That's why we want you to share what we do with others. A lot of seniors need this information. They don't know anything about it. Okay? Does helps deal with collections related to unsecured personal loans? How does it compare to a credit card? Oh, absolutely. I don't know what kind of unsecured loan you're talking about, but it doesn't matter. You know, if you're talking about a bank loan, um, a loan from a high interest outfit, I don't care who it is, or even someone you know, I don't care. Yeah, all your income is protected. We send out cease and desist letters to whatever creditor or collector you want us to, that you owe money to. So it's not just limited to credit cards, medical debt, you name it, timeshare, the car that went back, maybe a deficiency amount you owe on a car that was repossessed, you name it. Now that's what that we help you with all those things. So Georgia asks, can a state IRS lien on a bank account with primary Social Security deposits other than a check for working a state layer? Okay, well, I'll answer it this way. Uh, uh, um, can a state income tax collector garnish your bank account if you owe income taxes to a state? Okay, state revenue department. The same law that protects your bank account from being garnished by a credit card company also protects your bank account from being garnished by a state tax collector. So to answer your question, Georgia, no, a state tax collector, as long as the balance in your bank account is less than twice the amount of your federal benefit, they can't garnish or take anything. Now, will the IRS garnish your bank account? Theoretically, I can't remember the last time I saw the IRS garnish one of our clients' bank accounts. The most they would do, practically speaking, as is they would send notice of intent to offset 15% of Social Security, and then you can get on currently not collectible status and not have to pay it. Now, they could garnish your bank account, but they just don't do it. Okay. So, no. As long as you keep the and as long as you keep the balance less than twice the amount of your federal benefit, your Social Security that gets deposited each month, it's protected from your credit card, any judgment creditors, including from a state tax collector. Okay? Um, yeah, I'm sure able disability savings accounts are protected from garnishment. I've looked that up before. So this person got a little technical, when I told them, we protect seniors. Um, and then they listened to the video and they said, well, you protect, other than seniors, you protect anyone who gets disability income. Why do you say seniors? And that's what he says is, why do you say seniors when you protect others? Okay. So this is what I wrote him back. And he gave me a nice response. I said, because seniors' income is protected, and that is the vast majority of clients whom we serve. But we are also clear that we help persons who are of younger age who receive Social Security disability and other protected income. I mean, you can get retirement income and be in your late 50s or whatever. Okay. It's protected. For example, because that money is protected, if the title to the video was, should seniors or any other person of any other age who receives Social Security, pension, disability, VA benefits, and other forms of retirement worry about a lawsuit or judgment for debt, it might be a little too long. So it's for the sake of brevity that we say seniors, okay? But we help. And then he wrote me back. He made a comment on he says, okay, I understand. I agree. Thank you. I'll keep watching you. Yeah. So we say seniors, but it doesn't matter how old you are. Okay. If you're getting protected income, it's protected, period. Yeah. I'm Miss Ashak's about other videos. We do videos with senior living. If you want to see us, if you want to see me with senior living with, get a mental block. Look up senior living on YouTube. And Helps has got a lot of videos there. Okay. And we may be doing YouTube Live with Senior Living here coming up. And if we do that, I'm going to need your help because they're worried that people wouldn't ask questions if we do a YouTube Live with Senior Living. I told him there'll be no problems. I said, I would just tell you guys about it and we'd have plenty of people asking questions. And Senior Living, they have a lot bigger footprint on their YouTube page than we do. And we've got some videos with Senior Living that have 500,000 views or more. Okay. So if you want to see some more videos with helps, not with me, but with other people, look at Senior Living. Okay. It is with me, but with Senior Living. Farmhouse asks, I just received a judgment today with an order to make weekly payments to the law firm for Bank of America. I called, it's like Connecticut Legal Aid to see if they can assist me. There's no way I can afford this. Well, yeah, if you're getting Social Security or protected income, I don't care what the judgment says, you don't have to pay it, period. Now, legal aid does a lot of good things, but they don't really work in this area. Legal aid is kind of hampered by their restrictions. They get donations. You have to qualify to get involved. A lot of attorneys that work in legal aid or maybe are younger attorneys, and they're not familiar in this area. So you don't need to make the payments to Bank of America. No. You can call and talk to us. We'll go over it with you. Robert asks, is twice the amount of your pension protected in addition to your Social Security? If it's a federal pension, yes. Otherwise, no. Uh, it's still protected. It can't be garnished. But uh, the rule that went into effect 2012 provides that twice the amount of your federal benefit is protected, regardless of what monies are in there. So, say for example, you got $1,200 in Social Security, and you got $1,000 in a pension. Okay, so 2 times 1,200 is $2,400. Even if your pension, if it gets deposited in that account to which Social Security is located, it's protected in that account as long as the balance doesn't go over twice the amount of what the federal amount is. It doesn't matter what other funds are in there, where they came from. Now, let's say you only got a pension, you didn't get Social Security, and you got a lawsuit and they garnished the bank account. It is theoretically possible the money could get held up, but then you could file challenge of garnishment or claim exemption and get released. We help people do that when that happens, our clients, but it just doesn't happen very often. It's pretty rare. It just doesn't happen. Got to realize when people enroll in helps, you give us the creditors you owe money, we're going to send a letter out to the creditors you owe money to, the debt collectors. If they read the letter, if they have a comprehend it, they're going to realize that suing you is probably going to be a waste of their time. So it makes it less likely they would sue. And then if they sue you, they got to get a judgment, and that doesn't happen for after quite a while. And then they got to know where you bank, which isn't easy. You can't go to find out where someone banks. Okay? No, there shouldn't be an issue. Okay? Um, yeah, you're going to flood senior living with questions. I believe you. I know that. Yeah, I know that. I told him. I said, if we do YouTube Live with senior living, your phones are going to blow up. And they don't quite believe me, but they're going to find out. Hopefully we do it maybe starting in July or sometime up. I've been asking them for quite a while to do it. I think it'd be really great because more people that, there's a lot of seniors have these questions that you have today, and they just don't know where to go to get answers, accurate answers. There's just so many inaccurate answers out there. You get on the internet and you ask these questions, and very few of these websites will even tell you that your Social Security is protected, let alone the fact that you can be protected from collectors harassing you and you don't need to pay the debt. Instead, they want to set you up for debt management. And if you're lower income or poor, you can't afford it. Can't afford it. I thought pensions were protected from ERISA. They are protected. They can't just garnish the pension. But the question we're asking is, once it gets deposited into a bank account, okay, then is it protected? Well, yes, it's protected, just not automatically like the federal benefits, unless it's deposited in a bank account into which your federal benefit goes, and the amount in there is less than twice the amount of your federal benefit. Does that answer your question? Okay. Jeff Hoyt. Don't tell him. Yep, right. Not Holt, but Hoyt. Okay. Can the debt you cannot pay be reported to Social Security as income and put you in overpayment status? How much of your Social Security can they reduce? I do not have any assets. Well, this guy, that's a note from someone from Pennsylvania, and they got things a little mixed up. Okay, if you don't pay a debt, there can be what's called a 1099-C can be reported to the IRS, and the IRS can deem that as income since you didn't pay the debt, and theoretically you could owe taxes. But if you're not required to file tax returns, you don't need to worry about a 1099-C. The IRS will never follow up with it. And even if you did owe taxes, if you're required to file taxes and you file a 1099-C, like I've said before, if you're insolvent, which means if your debt exceeds your assets, essentially, then there's a form you can file with your tax return, 982, and you check the second box, and there's no tax. So the Social Security isn't, so yeah, there's nothing to worry about if you get a 1099-C. So Tweety Bird asked, what legal documents do seniors really need if no property is involved, like a will, power of attorney, medical power? Just a quick list. That's a pretty good question. I've got YouTube, I got articles and letters that talk about that, but um, do you need a will? I get a lot of websites that say you got to have a will. Well, not always. Probably the majority of seniors don't need a will. You can get one. You can do your own. I've got an email that we can send to people where you can do your own email. You do your own will. Power of attorney. Not a bad idea. As you get older, sometimes it might make sense to give one of the kids power of attorney. That way, if you can't operate, they can operate on your behalf. They can deal with the bank account and do with things like that. Doesn't mean that if you give them power of attorney that they're going to take over at that point, but they could keep it in their back pocket and have it available. And the same thing with a medical directive or medical power of attorney. It's not a bad idea to have. And I think we've got an email that talks about that and gives links to those things. So Kathy says, Eric, I have two small pensions and Social Security. So are the two pensions protected? Yes, they are. You bet they are. You could have three pensions or four or five. They're protected. Okay. They're going to be protected under that law that was passed in 1974 called ERISA, or they're going to be protected under a state law. In 46 years of practice, I've never seen anyone lose their pension, okay, for a garnishment. Okay. Yeah, I did have a beard. 6 months ago, I had a beard. I shaved it off. That's right. She's only on senior living. I had a beard. What is the income amount not to file taxes? Well, you can get on the IRS website and you can ask the question on Google or on a search, say, do I need to file tax returns? And the IRS website will give you really clear explanation of that. But if your only income is Social Security, you don't need to file tax returns. Period. I can tell you that no matter what you get in Social Security. And you can have a little bit more money on top of that, at least like $15,000, and you're still not required to file tax returns. The lady from Oregon got a hold of us. Husband passed away recently, so she lost if you're married and you get Social Security and your spouse passes away, then you get the higher of the two Social Securities, but one of them goes away. And that's what happened in her case. When her spouse passed away, she got his Social Security, which was higher than hers, but hers went away. And she had all this debt, she could no longer afford to pay it. And very traumatized by that. She was his caretaker for 8 years, and this happened fairly recently. So we told her, I said, you don't need to pay the debt anymore. You don't need to worry about that. She'd be okay with his Social Security if she didn't have to pay this other debt. And, she can enroll in HELPS. We'll send a letter to the creditor she owes money to. And they're going to leave her alone. She's going to have peace come back to her life. She's not going to be swimming in dough, but she's going to be fine. Okay? So if you have any questions on anything we're talking about, or if you're having these kind of problems, be sure and call us, 855-435-7787. 855-HELPS-US or helps us. And we got attorneys and paralegals that will talk to you. We'll answer your questions. We'll talk to you 2, 3, 4, 5 times. When you talk to us, we enter some basic information, so when you call back, we don't start over again. We know that you've told us before. And you can enroll right over the phone on HELPS. We push a button, you're going to get an email from HELPS that says, welcome to HELPS. That instant. So if we hang up the phone and you get a call the next minute later, and you gave them our number and they call us, you're going to be in our system as being our client. We don't turn anyone away that needs our help. Okay? Sunset. Ask me, how is it's a young cat and a young dog doing? Well, you spoiled me. I, uh, my our cat is being taken care of by my granddaughter, who is a veterinarian in Los Angeles and is living the life of Riley. Now, my dog, who I was very worried about, I've got 8 kids, and I had a devil of a time trying to find one of them to take care of my dog. It's a half poodle and half border collie, who I love. I love her dearly. She'll be 2 years old in August, and it was really difficult leaving her. And one of my sons agreed to take her. And I don't know, I may have talked about it before, but it's worked out really well. In fact, they live on a cul-de-sac, and he takes her to work with him. And when he comes back, she plays with the kids in the neighborhood. Well, last week, they got a call from the local grade school, which is really close by, from the vice principal. And my daughter-in-law did. And they says, you have this dog. And the 5th grade is having their field day coming up here, in, like the next day or the 2 days away. And the whole class wants to have your dog come to our grade school for field day. Would you be able to do that? And so my daughter-in-law said, sure, I'll bring her over. And she sent me some pictures with all these 5th graders playing with Betsy. So I know she's happy. So that my dog's doing good. I remember when I first started Helps, a guy he couldn't afford a dog. And now when he joined Helps, he thought he'd be able to afford one. And, so I understand pets are kind of be important in our life. Okay. So, Miss H, when a senior lives in an unlimited homestead and his client of Helps and wants to sell a home, will the home be protected from creditors after the sale of the home? You're talking about the money, maybe what you're saying? It depends on state law, but the answer is yes. It depends on the state. There's different things that can be done to protect the money. Some states you have to reinvest it into another home within a certain amount of time, but don't worry about it. We talk to people and tell them what the law is on that. Is it a guarantee? I love some of these questions, you guys. Is it a guarantee that in most cases, eventually every creditor that you owe money to will file a lawsuit against you? Well, I'm going to say it this way. It's a guarantee that in most cases, eventually, maybe just a few of the creditors would ever file a lawsuit, if any. Now, they could, more than one could file a lawsuit, and I don't give a percentage. I guess it's theoretically possible that they could all file a lawsuit, but that would shock me. They just don't do that. Okay. I used to say 10%, but then I've been scolded by the other attorneys that helps that I don't say that anymore. Because sometimes maybe 20 or 30% would get lawsuits against them. Okay. And then they say, Eric said only 10%. Now there's 30% have filed lawsuits against me. No, I can't predict, but it doesn't matter if they all file lawsuits against you because you're not going to have to go to court. Your income's protected. We're going to be there for you to answer your questions. Okay? So you don't worry. That's what we tell our clients. If you ever have a question or concern, you pick up the phone and you call us no matter how often. Okay? Kathy says, Eric, I have called you all more than 5 times and never have had that experience. Everyone is just wonderful and I can sleep good at night. That's right. If you've only called us 5 times, that's not very many. We've got a lot of people that have called us 50 times, okay, or more. It doesn't matter. That's Helps has to be that way. That we have to be there to answer your questions because these things crop up. Now, eventually they wind down, and eventually you'll realize that the problems go away. But at the beginning, there's maybe more than normal, but we don't want you to worry. Okay? Okay. Rob H4, old video mentioned issues with garnishments requests at credit unions. If I ask about them, how they handle things like that, general language should I use, or what department should I ask for? Don't, please don't do that. You'll get frustrated and they'll get frustrated. You don't need to do it. Okay, here's the rule. There is a department in a bank and in a credit union that deals with garnishments. And they have one or two persons in that department deal with garnishments. And they're well trained to know that twice the amount of your federal benefit is automatically protected. I've yet to talk to a bank manager or a credit union manager at a local credit union or local bank that understands this rule. They don't. So if you ask them, or you're just going to get frustrated, they're not going to know the answer, or they're going to tell you, oh, we have to garnish, they'll give you a wrong answer. But there's a department of the bank that does know the right answer. So trying to call the bank that deals with the department, it's just going to frustrate them. Okay. And you'll get frustrated too, because you'll probably talk to someone that doesn't know the rule. And you'll think, oh my gosh, they don't understand this. They're going to take my money. No, don't worry about it. If it were to ever happen, which it won't, but if it were, you get a hold of us, we take care of it. When the rule went into effect in 2012, there was a few years where there was a problem. In fact, we got preloaded emails explaining to banks and credit unions the law in really basic, simple language, and giving them the source so they could look it up. Okay. Now we used to have to send that out periodically. Sometimes we'd have to call them on the phone. I remember one time talking to a bank, and they had it, and the attorney called me back for this. It was a credit union, and I told him, I said, no, we're not going to sue you. Just educate your credit union about the rule. He didn't know anything about the rule. I guess 999 out of 1,000 attorneys don't know that rule, how your bank account is protected automatically, that twice the amount of your federal benefits. They don't know the rule. So trying to ask someone to verify it for me, not any good. But if you type in, you'll get answers on the internet. There will be some websites that talk about it, like Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They'll tell you about it. Okay. I have a quarterly federal tax payment coming up. I detest the administration's decision on how to spend the money that I send them. Where's my future if I decide not to pay? Well, it depends. We always encourage you to pay your taxes, but if you're going without basics like food or medicine, then you can, and your income is low or modest or poor, you can qualify for it currently not collectible status. As a general rule, that would be about $2,500 or less if you're single, or even a little bit more, or $3,500 or less, or a little bit more if you're married. Okay. We have an email that talks about how to get on currently not collectible status. So I talked to someone yesterday or the day before. He was paying $110 to the IRS, but his income was $1,200 a month. I told him, I said, I knew that he didn't have that $110 to send to the IRS every month. And I told him, you don't need to do that. You can stop paying it. And he said, well, I agreed to pay. I said, you don't have to. You can't afford it. You need that for your basic needs. And he says, that's right, Eric. I don't know. And I said, you can stop paying that $110 to the IRS. What are they going to do? Probably nothing. The worst they would do is send you a notice of intent. They're going to offset 15% of your Social Security, but then you'll have 60 days to get on currently not collectible status. But I extremely doubt that they would even send you that, because they've got your finance. They know your income, and the computer's going to let them know that this guy doesn't have enough money to pay these taxes, and even if we try to force it, he can get on currently not collectible status. So Jimmy asked, my credit union, I know the lady that handles garnishments for many years. She showed me what she does. It took her all 2 minutes to search the codes and send the garnishment back. Oh, thanks, Jimmy. Uh, that's what I tell people. People ask, they have 48 hours, and I tell people it takes 4 to 8 minutes. But you've corrected me. You say it takes 2 minutes, according to your person at your credit union. Okay, 4 to 8 minutes is 48. See, I did it on, but 2 minutes. Yeah, they know this law now. It's been in effect for a while. Is there a statute of limitations within which a creditor has to file? It depends on the state, and yes, there is. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 6 years. And it usually, the statute of limitations goes from the time when you incur the debt or when you last made a payment towards the debt. But once again, if you do get sued, it doesn't matter. They can't collect from you. Okay? So I talked to someone, in fact, today from Michigan. It was a newer client. I think they had just rolled yesterday, in fact. She was worried about her. See, like when we enrolled her, we said, if you have any questions, you call back. And then she did. She called us the next day, today. They have some equity in the home um, over and above the homestead exemption for Michigan. I think the homestead exemption for Michigan is, if she's married, is like close to $50,000. And she probably had 100,000 equity in the home. She was worried that someone would take her home. I said, no, the debt was just, they're not going to take your home. The debt was owned by her only. Even if she owned it with her husband, they wouldn't, it's not their practice to go after her home. They wouldn't do that. And then she was worried about her car. She talked to an attorney who said her car was at risk. Well, she had a car that was worth about 22,000. She owed 18 on it. I told her, no way on God's green earth is they going to go after your car. Even if it was free and clear, they don't go after your car. The attorney you talked to didn't know what they were talking about. They're not going after your car. Okay. Then she owed 18,000. They'd have to pay off the 18,000 and then sell it to be able to get 22,000 to make 4,000, which they wouldn't do. The paperwork to go through to do that, impossible. Even if she owned it free and clear, they just don't do it. Okay. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, this person calls us or contacts us from Nebraska. Because of my credit card debt and not being able to stay on top of the payments, I went to accredited debt relief. I'm just blown away sometimes about the name of these debt management companies. They're accredited. They're an accredited debt relief company. Oh boy. There's one, Christian debt relief. Yeah, tell me about it. They have me on monthly payment plan that is still hard for me to pay. Well, yeah, because her income was like $1,500 a month. They got her paying $300 a month, and it's Social Security. Only income, Social Security. And it says, along with my other obligations, living paycheck to paycheck, it's getting difficult every month. Duh, tell me about it. I'm at a loss of what to do. I believe in order to survive, I should file bankruptcy. Couldn't afford to file bankruptcy. You don't need to file bankruptcy. Your help in this decision is appreciated. What we're going to tell her is, hey, when you enrolled with this accredited debt relief, did they tell you, by the way, you don't really need our help? Your Social Security is protected. No one can take it. And there's a law that you can be protected from collector harassment called the Fair Debt Collection. Did they tell you that? No, they didn't. Why didn't they tell you that? If they would have told you that, you wouldn't have enrolled from them and they wouldn't be making money off of you. And for the fun of it, I got on their website. They're located in California. I think this is the one. They had a lot of positive reviews, but then I looked at the reviews for number one. Oh, the fees they charge. No, these debt management companies, with few exceptions, don't tell seniors the complete truth. If they told you the complete truth, they wouldn't sign up with you, and a significant portion of their business would go away. Okay. So this person calls us from Texas. I was trying to get help with my debt. I'm working with Guardian Litigation. That's another great name. They're going to guard you. To help with settling up my accounts with a monthly payment schedule. They have asked for another payment each month as they settled another high debt. I'm paying $875 and now have and now a 675 additional payments. I have a high balance card remaining that for some reason they didn't put in the program, so now I'm being sued. This has been a nightmare to get through, and I'm still in trouble. Well, of course you're in trouble. These guys, when you're a senior, they don't care about helping you. All they care about is the fee they can get from the monthly payment you're making them. If you're a senior, they don't tell you that you don't need to pay the debt. In other words, they put some seniors into utter poverty, making a payment they can't afford. And this is guardian litigation. They're going to guard you. Yeah, well, maybe they're going to guard you, but they're going to rip you off at the same time. I talk smack about some of these guys. They ever call me and write me letters? Nah, because they know what they're doing. They know they're not giving the complete truth. They withhold this information from seniors. They don't tell them the truth that their income is protected, and it really gets me. Simply social. Eric, do you have any know anything about veterans forgiven for debt? Well, I don't know anything about it, but I know one thing: if you're a veteran and you're getting VA benefits or Social Security or retirement money, you don't need to worry about your debt being forgiven. They can't collect from you. Okay. Um, is there a statute of limitations within which your creditor has to file a lawsuit against you? Depends on state law. Could be 3, 5, 6 years from the date when the debt was incurred or when you last made a payment. Okay. A Missouri client who enrolled yesterday. He had $1,200 per month income, 1,250 per month income, 27,000 in debt, a mobile home in a park. And okay, she was worried because her daughter had helped her. I talked to this person this morning. Her daughter had been helping her make payments, and she was worried that because her daughter had helped her make payments, that if she stopped making payments, that would her daughter be responsible for the debt? And I told her, no. I said, just because you help make a payment on a debt doesn't make you responsible for the debt. But she was a worrier, and she was worried. She had tried to contact them and get the daughter's banking information off. They wouldn't. They didn't even want to talk to her. I said, your daughter does. They can't go after your daughter. No, you don't need to worry about that. You understand what I'm saying? I think you do. So Paul says, Google any questions you have. Artificial intelligence. Okay, well, Paul Paleface, I've done that. It's convinced me that artificial intelligence, at least in this area, is not very intelligent. It's based on what they can find out from websites and stuff. And if all these websites are giving people false information, then that's what artificial intelligence picks up. Like you can type in, what can seniors do if they owe debt they can't afford to pay? They'll talk all about debt management and debt settlement. It's not going to tell them normally, it's not going to say, well, if you're a senior and you're on Social Security, your income is protected. They can't take it, and there's a fair debt. No, they don't tell them that. Why isn't that? Because none of these information that's out there from these debt management, debt settlement companies tell people that. There's a concerted effort by them to keep this information away from seniors. They don't want you to know that. So artificial intelligence is based on what's out there. And if there's no accurate information out there, the artificial intelligence is just going to repeat inaccurate information. Now, I'm sure in other areas it's perfectly good and legitimate, but I've been very sorely disappointed by what I've read from artificial intelligence when I search on this area. Do you think the Capital One's acquisition of Discover Call will alter Discover's approach to litigation? No, I think Capital One will probably buy into Discover. I don't think Discover. I think Discover is doing it because they think that it works. And if other companies join in, then there may be more lawsuits out there. But it may backfire on them when they start. Everyone's suing, and seniors are going to realize that they don't have to pay it. Okay. So I'll tell you. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I'm in Louisiana. I'm in New Orleans now for 2 years. For at least 1 out of 3 of the billboards are advertisements for personal injury attorneys. I don't know if I told you this yet. They're all over the place. See, de Bouzier, go this guy, go this guy. And some of these guys, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on billboard ads. Maybe millions. I don't know. Some of the big firms. One thing I've noticed about New Orleans, is drivers, at least my experience so far, after about 7 weeks, they drive really cautiously. They don't. No one is going. There may be a few guys going fast, but they're going pretty safe. They try to go pretty safe, and I think it's because they're all reading these billboards, and they're saying, "I don't want to get sued. I don't want to get sued." So everyone's driving safely. So the attorneys putting these ads up, trying to get business, or actually it's backfiring on them because everyone's driving safely, getting into fewer wrecks. Though I did see a doozy on the high-rise bridge on Saturday morning. Anyway, yeah, it depends on the state what your statute of limitation is. Okay, this person contacts us from South Carolina. I've had fraud committed on my credit cards and cannot pay them. I only have Social Security and an IRA. My husband gets a small pension and Social Security. He has a personal loans and credit card debt. My question is, I have a small CD, that's a certificate of deposit with our bank, that is maturing. I'm worried about being sued and losing these funds. This is the only money I have. If I keep it there, is there a chance I could be sued and lose the funds? I suppose within the realm of possibilities, that's possible. But it's possible I could walk outside this afternoon and get hit by a bolt of lightning. I don't live my life that way. They'd have to sue you. They'd have to know where you have the CD, and it's all pretty unlikely. And if you were worried about it, you could cash the CD out and put it in a different place where the money would be. We'd talk that over with you. Some people are really worriers, and they want to make sure everything is perfectly safe as much as possible. Okay, here's another person I talked to. I think it was today again. They said, it's an existing client. They changed to a new bank, but they owe an NSF check. They're from Florida for an old bank. And she's worried she had to pay it. And I said, no, you don't have to pay it. All her funds are going into her new bank. Her Social Security is. And if you've got a money you owe to that old bank, you don't need to pay that debt, even if it's an NSF check. And then she says, well, I don't want to go down there to close the account. They're going to ask me, what about this NSF check? I said, you do not need to go down to close the account. You're not putting any more money in the account, right? She said, no. The account is zero balance. It's non-sufficient funds. I said, yeah. You do not need to go down physically to close the account. You don't need to call them on the phone. You don't need to do anything. They'll just close it themselves. Now, they may still send you some letters. If you get that, you get it to us. We'll send them a cease and desist letter. No, you don't need to worry about it. Okay? Time flies when we're having a good time, right? So this might be the last one we do. This person says, I'm being sued by Capital One. They now have a judgment against me and have scheduled a Zoom meeting for July 1st. I called them in December and paid $500 and set up monthly payments. They did not take any money from my account. I realized I had transposed the number and immediately contacted them with the correct number. I sent another check for whatever, and they cashed it. Then I tried to contact them phone and kept getting voicemail. I sent another check and it was returned to me. I will be 80 in August. And it talks about the law firm. Can you help me? Yeah. Uh, you don't need to pay Capital One. You don't need to pay this law firm, and we'll we'll help you with this Zoom meeting. You not need to you don't need to go. She's 80. Her income, Social Security, or pension is protected. Even if you made an arrangements to pay a creditor and you enroll in helps, or you can stop making the payment. Just because you agreed to pay doesn't mean that you have to keep paying the ones you agreed to pay. No, you don't have to do that. Okay, so it's been an hour. I want to thank you for participating. Please press the like button. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do that. Thank you for your good questions today. Thank you for your kind comments. And we always ask our clients to share what helps does with others. And I will talk to you tomorrow, God willing. And he will be. I'm sure I'll be here tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.